Ladies and gentlemen, merhaba to our guests from Turkey and Pakistan. Welcome all of you. Hoş geldiniz. This is Dr. Sibel Bayram, your host for today. I will moderate this season. Respected academicians, dear participants, and worthy guest, Dr. Safir AWAN. This webinar has been organized by Turkish İMBAT Academy. First of all, I would like to thank you, Professor Doğan Günay, Professor İlhan Genç, Professor Mehibe Coşar for giving little bit I want to mention about this platform. Since last year, this academy organized many programs, not only literature, linguistic, and also cultural, social programs. I am sure İMBAT Academy will continue with many very effective, successful, and creative programs. Also, I am proud of member of this academic platform. Yes, today what will we discuss? Our webinar is titled, as you know, Postfeminism and Czech Literature. And I would like to introduce shortly to you our guest speaker. Later, we will discuss our topics. So, Professor Muhammed Safir AWAN, PhD in English Literature and Postcolonial English, has about 24 hours in teaching, research, and teachers, and training and curriculum development. He worked on his postdoc in literatures in English at Universities of North Carolina. Since March 2016, earlier, he has worked also Area Study Center, Quaid-i-Azam University, Islamabad, and International Islamic University. His research work has been published in national and international, and also he is editor of journal is Critical Inquiries. And also he is chair of National Curriculum Revision Committee for English, constituted by IPC in Pakistan HC. Now we can start, but before later we will ask to our guest. Now just I want to mention a little bit about feminist history. As you know, before feminist theory, and also some women movements started in the world 17th century. Actually, according to Bayram, this is not right. Even before that, there was some women movement in local tribe in America. And later, Christopher Columbus 17th centuries, as you know, feminist theory started, and Pizan, Georges, Wollstonecraft, Dom, and worked a lot and also struggled a lot for women. 19th century also was very good time for feminist movement, because at that time in America, in Europe, and also in Australia, it was very common. And it's about political, education, and also social, and women got many things. For example, first wave continue in early to 20th centuries. But of course, later war started, and also there were many economic problems, and also women destroyed and affected very badly. When we come to 1960 years, many people know Simone De Bova is very famous, and also in the second wave, she is very important. And we can see this second movement, and end of 70 years, and especially 80 years, we can see very clearly. But of course, in Turkey, feminist movement is not like Western countries, because in Western countries, maybe we can say a little bit more sharp than Turkey, because dynamics are very different. And later, 19 years, third feminist way, and finally 20 and fourth theories, post-feminism. And also about, we should talk about Czech literature, because Czech literature also is not independent on post-feminism. And according to some people, Czech literature is not literature. According to some people, Czech literature also, we need such this literature. And also nowadays in Turkish literature, we can see, today we will discuss very detailed with our awarded speaker. Yes, Dr. Safir. Feminism. Liberal feminism, cultural feminism, extreme feminism, black feminism, Marxist feminism, also nowadays cyberfeminism. Why, in your view, feminism is a social, cultural movement has been constantly changing? Can you think of a single feminist theory? Can you hear me, Dr. Safir?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sibel, Bayram, and I'm especially grateful to İMBAT Academy from our beloved brotherly, sisterly country, the Turkish Republic. This question, the first question that you have put up for my response, it demands perhaps response. But when you say that, can we think of a single feminist theory, I think this is not even desirable. We all understand that the world is in a constant state of flux, and human beings change, their ideologies, their ideas, they go through a sea change, and we are supposed to get wiser and better with the passage of time. Singularity is never desirable. It is the death of conflicting ideologies and belief systems and theories. So single feminist theory or any sort of, singularity in any other theory is not even desirable. The issue of women's rights and their relationship with men and their positioning in various societies, it cannot be summed up in any one monolithic label. That is why feminism has been labeled organization. We had a very powerful presence of post-colonial feminism and many other forms of indigenous feminisms, black feminist movement. And then comparatively more recently, we have come across Muslim feminisms of various sorts. I mean, within the Islamic ideology itself, various kinds of Muslim feminisms also exist. Even Iranian feminism is a little bit different. So it is because cultures differ. In some, primitive in inverted commas societies, women still rule, or at least they have control over their households. Historically speaking, if you allow me to quote Elaine Showalter, for example, she has divided this into 3 phases. Different ways that you have mentioned in your initial comments. So the first, type of feminism that Showalter talks about, or the first stage, you can say, that was the feminine stage of feminism. It was the stage when women writers were trying to imitate and copy their male, counterparts. And then came the feminist phase, where women advocated minority oppression. And then you can say the female side, or the female phase of this movement. So in this phase, the focus now, for example, is on women's texts as opposed to merely uncovering misogyny in men's texts. So Showalter, as many scholars know, it's now old news, but just to one is biological, the other is linguistic, and then psychoanalytic and cultural model. Many other theorists also, they have, of course, written about this in a number of ways. So there is no denying this fact that the achievements of feminism in claiming and in gaining women's rights, they are it has also contributed in a number of negative impacts. So post-feminism is a kind of reaction to those socio-cultural impacts that surfaced by the radical, due to the radical feminist thought. For example, destroying women's faith in the family values, resulting into the winning of this very vital primary in the 70s, particularly in its more hardcore brand, that is French European feminism, which ultimately, of course, reached the American shores as well, and there also women claimed their rights on the basis of equality of sexes. So I hope that this is enough to cover your first question.
Thank you, Dr. Safir. Actually, as you say, you said post-feminism actually a little bit is reaction. And now I want to say something. Kent State University researched about this topic actually. According to their nowadays women hate previous feminist movement. Even they say no need now. Already women got many rights. Are not trend, as you said. And what are your social or political reasons for the rise of post-feminism? Can you in more?
Yes, sure. I don't think that there is an element of the classical Euro-American feminism. But I believe that since majority of women, especially in Euro-American context, they achieved their social and economic independence, and many social indicators and economic surveys that they have achieved a lot. So that the voices against traditional feminist politics, which have never been totally absent in the first place, they began to gain currency in the world. Especially in the US, as we see, more women are now employed than men, thereby contributing more to the national wealth than men do. Another important indicator is that women now surpass humanities. So, generally speaking, post-feminist debate tends to crystallize around issues of victimization, autonomy, and responsibility, because it is critical of any definition of women as victims who are unable to control their own lives. It embraces a flexible ideology. I mean, post-feminism embraces because it tends to be implicitly heterosexist in orientation. Post-feminism commonly, it seeks to develop an agenda which can find a place for men also, as husbands, as fathers, as sons, and even as friends. So this term post-feminism that has itself originated from within the media in the early 90s, indicative of women's joyous liberation from the ideological shackles of hopelessly outdated feminist movement. So this is the view which has reached the 9th edition of the concise Oxford Dictionary as well, where it is defined as post-feminism is defined attitudes, etc., which ignore or reject feminist ideas of the 1960s and subsequent decades. So this is how, I mean, it is perceived at this point in time, but we can speak more about it in the light of your questions.
Yes, every feminist movement has some claim. And for example, first feminist movement, they demand political and social, and also about education, economic rights. And later, second wave, same meaning, they started to talk about mahram topics. And so now, what is post-feminist main claim? What is the difference between post-feminism and previous feminist ideas?
I think this shift from feminism to post-feminism, it was not sudden. Of course, a lot of activism and a lot of thought processes, a lot of scholarship has gone into it. I mean, between these two shifts, you can say. So this shift from one to the other was marked by one International Women's Day, as we know it, it's you know, celebrated on 8th March. So in Paris in 1968, on that day, a large number of women marched through the city carrying placards which read, "Down with feminism." So this was, I mean, quite an event because to our understanding, France was the home of themselves, wrote it on their placards, "Down with feminism." So it has developed from actually the, you can say, deconstruction of the patriarchal discourses. This brand of feminism was influenced by the key analytical strategies of contemporary thought, such as psychoanalysis, 1970s, this led to a revalorization of female identity and motherhood, challenging the original notion that motherhood is a condition of oppression. So, I mean, this is what I can say at this point in time. You may ask me more questions, and perhaps we will be able to discuss more.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Samir. Now, I want to discuss this term, post-feminist term. And the first time in 1980, and this term was used by Tori Moi. And also nowadays, there are so many post-terms. And as you know, post-truth, post-feminism, and postmodernism, and also feminism. Post mean also a little bit phase in its development. And post is not dangerous, you think?
Yeah.
For feminist movement.
Yeah, no. I believe that post-feminism actually represents feminism's maturity. Maturity into a confident body of theory and politics. And it represents pluralism and difference, and reflecting on its position in relation to other philosophical. This, I mean that the first and the second wave feminists, they claimed their rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. That is, men and women are equal in the eye of the society, or should be equal in the eye of the law, and therefore, in everything, they must be given equal rights, because men traditionally had more on the basis of this slogan of equality. But later on, they realized during the third wave, and perhaps this was a great shift towards a third wave as well, that the rights were claimed on the basis of difference. That since men and women are essentially biologically different, so perhaps that those biological differences lead to certain psychological differences as well. Women are good at, therefore, rights should be given on the basis of difference. So this, I think, was an essential shift. Regarding your view, that is this phenomenon of posting and everything. When we apply this to post-feminism, where feminism might be perceived as a concern of the past, cancelling all the feminist successes accomplished throughout these years by women in different parts of the world, who are connected through the spirit of global sisterhood. That is, all of those achievements of the past, they have come to mature, and are after. It is an admission of feminism to a non-essentialist realization of the concept, like post-colonialism or postmodernism. So this contemporary non-essentialist, pluralistic, more inclusive version of feminism is a multifarious concept that draws upon and inspires academic and theoretical deliberation. Activist movements and also popular culture, right? So this is my view about this posting in feminism. It's not a total break from the past. It is not a total rejection of feminism. It is an extension and it is an improvement upon the past.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Safir. Actually, you gave us very useful information about post-feminism and also to post-feminism, because also Czech literature a little bit, we can say, in post-feminism. And in the early 90s started this Czech literature term, and also nowadays common. In American also is used Czech lit in slang language. And when we check this term and this literature, and maybe we can say, and many people in the world and also in Turkey, same. Later on, Bashnal also wrote the Second City books, and later also adapted to sitcom, and many people watched. But when we look at the past, also Jane Austen, mother of Czech literature, and American writer Julie Kenner also has different opinion about this topic, and she says, and already this literature article says, if, for example, Jane Austen lived in these centuries, and I am sure her character would be like Czech literature character. If we go back to past, how did this kind of literature begin in the 19th century? Really, this literature already existed in the past, or no, new literature?
No, I'm sorry, I don't believe in this, and I can't agree with this, critical observation, because writers, women writers, and women's writings that we see, they started making a mark in the cultural map of the world, and particularly in the Western were very much different from what we see in this contemporary phenomenon of Czech literature. People who mention Jane Austen, for instance,
Yes.
Bronte sisters, I don't believe that these writers can be dubbed as Czech writers of Czech literature. Why? Because even during their lifetime, these publishers, for example, Jane Austen, while Czech literature is a huge publishing success. And if you compare, similarly, George Eliot couldn't write with in her own name. Her own name was she had to write with a male pen name. Same is the case with the Bronte sisters. And yes, in our own cultural backyard in the subcontinent, Ruqayya Sakhawat Hussain, for example, she wrote in the late to find their names on the titles of their books. So this link, I think, is unnecessary. There is no such historical bridge we cannot create. Therefore, we have to forget that, in my opinion. If you also compare the themes that these women writers of the 1920s is the darling of Hollywood, and her novels are many times adapted for cinema screen and for television screen. So her concerns were morals and marriages, morals, manners and marriages, and of course class and money. She is also regarded as, for example, so why is it so? Because in the simple plot lines that she created, an important factor running as a motif in her books, in her stories, that was her concern with money and class. So, of course, these two are very serious issues. So if you compare the Czech literature of our own times, literature, they are mostly only spending money. They are shopaholics, and they love things, for example, shiny things, and their concerns are different. While those writers of the past, they, I believe, had more serious social, cultural concerns.
Yes, and actually, same arguments, similar arguments. Also, there Turkish literature. For example, especially between 1923 and 1940 years, there were many romance novels. For example, our Turkish participants knew very well, and Güzide Sabri, Kerim Nadir, Muazzez Tahsin, Feride Celali, for example. In their novel, also character and little bit maybe similar Czech literature, and they were very modern and educated, and also same arguments also available in Turkish literature. But, of course, and in Czech literature, when we observe women characters, we can say different. We cannot say already was existed, and I agree in this topic to you.
Thank you.
And now, and also Czech word. For example, before Bridget Jones's Diary, also by slang language maybe. Why was the term Czech literature used? Isn't this term offensive to women? For example, if I say frankly, and I don't like such a term. And also in Turkey, same situation. In Turkish, is called çıtır edebiyatı. And also çıtır edebiyatı is not so much good term for this literature.
A scholarly, you can say, interpretation or any kind of scholarly reading of this. I believe this is simply an American invention. I agree that, it's a little bit a derogatory term, and it's also a little offensive. This term. But Czech is, in American slang, it refers to young women who are independent, for example. So because of that, perhaps, and chick is also used for such women by young men, right? So when people saw, such women moving in such books, such works, they came to be regarded as a chick literature. So this is what I can say about the origin, you can say, of chick literature.
Yes. And maybe we should discuss a little bit about character, chick literature character. And for example, Mass says, and these women in chick literature are very sensual, and brave, honest, hilarious, intelligent, and so much free, and never have any regret. Men, and also they don't feel, they have to struggle with men and with rules like previous women character. What are characteristics differences from feminist characters or from previous female characters? What are these characters? Can you little bit framed and these women characters?
Sure. But I think I would like to change the question a little bit. Instead of focusing on characters, we must focus on characteristics, because characters change in different novels, and they may have their individual and idiosyncratic characteristics. Similarly,
yes, characteristic difference. This may be.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the common themes, thematic concern. Because we are trying to link post-feminism with chick literature, therefore, I would say that contemporary post-feminist literature, it has many strains and many shades and colors, but at the same time, one of its shades is characterized by chick literature, or you may also say romance literature, genre fiction. Chick literature back to the female-centered novels of Charlotte Bronte, Jane Austen, as you earlier mentioned. In contemporary tradition, Helen Fielding's Bridget Jones' Diary, published in 1998, that marks the beginning of chick lit tradition. So since then, if you take that as the beginning point, up to now, a lot of such into the light. They have certain common characteristics, which, so this kind of literature, it exhibits humor. These women are funny. Usually, I mean, if I may bring in Oscar Wilde, he does not see much of humor in women. But of this chick literature, one of its prominent characteristics is that there is humor, and there is always an urban heroine. Why urban heroines? Because they are highly educated, they have great fashion sense, and they are also independent in their thought. They want to live their own lives. So they are in almost all of these novels. Then love, and that may, leading to marriage, and before that, this dating culture, which is especially an American thing, that is very common in all of these. Even in Pakistani Sikh literature, we see that dating and such love relationships and even casual relationships, they are very common. Similarly, consciousness about personal care and beauty, and a rebellious attitude towards conventions. That we see very common in all of these, characters and the writers who have created those characters. Of course, one may say that this rebellious attitude is also found in, for example, George Eliot's her home behind, and she tries to get out of the shackles of those conventions. But at the same time, we know that George Eliot has written one of the most deplorable endings in English fiction's history. That is when Maggie Tulliver and her brother, they are drowned in the flood. So the point is that the writer of the 19th she did not have that kind of courage, because the writer herself was also a part of that system and society which was oppressing women in like that. With the growing use of technology, association of young people with literature is getting weaker. This reading void is filled by throughout the world. So I believe that because of this appeal to the young minds that we see because of these themes that I have mentioned, and very interesting characters who are not tragic, who usually stamp their success in the society, and therefore they are liked by the young people, and people they are following them, and they like to read about their life.
Thank you, Dr. Safi. Actually, tonight, unfortunately, we had internet issue, and I am reading a comment in chat books, and we are very so sorry. Actually, we selected this place. We thought participants cannot hear us, and thank you so much for their patience, actually. And we are so sorry about this issue. But we should continue.
Yes, of course, we should continue. I think, am I audible to you? I cannot ask this perhaps from the audience, but I hope I'm audible, and I'm not facing any kind of problem.
So sorry for this problem. But also, dear participants, you can continue write to your question in chat box, and end of this discussing, and our dear speaker will answer. Is now also this Czech literature have received also so much criticism. literature looks like soap bubbles. Nowadays, people doesn't like to read very deep books, deep novels. And also, when they read these such books, also they forget very easily, very quickly. And also, other writer Doris Lessing says, and people can forget very easily. And also, Lessing say, and I am very sad for they are writing such this novel, and because not quality, very poor literature. And also she says, for example, if they wrote instead of such this literature, if they wrote normal their real life, would be more useful for people. And but also there is other opinion opposite. For example, novelist and feminist Winter Sons, and says, and also we need such this novel. As you can see, authors and critics have different opinions, but certainly this literature has received a lot of criticism from many authors. How do you evaluate their critics? They are right, and really, this literature is very poor, very unnecessary, or no, also as women, we need such this literature.
In our sexual preference, in our ideological stances, we are all different from each other. Therefore, there's no harm in having this kind of these kind of writings, which represent the aspirations and the desires of young people, especially young women who are urban and who want to be successful and who want to read about circles. Chick lit fiction is regarded as having lesser or no symbolic significance. But if we give a closer look, these are not only the girl meet guy kind of stuff, or the girl next door kind of stuff. Rather, these that our young people are going through constantly. Therefore, I believe that Sikh literature is unjustly criticized as short-lived. For example, I was reading one article that was published in Washington Post, where it said that the honeymoon for Sikh literature is over. So they regard this kind of literature deprecation of Sikh literature is largely due to its association with females as producers and as readers. This feminization of the genre, I think, is resulting into skepticism and doubts. Sikh literature is even tagged as being stories of bad women who are not worth deeming associated with Sikh literature are due to the prefix Sikh, as you mentioned earlier, and this prefix gives it girlish infantilization. So the formulaic construction of this genre is also subjected to criticism. But that objection and all other such objections, they can be yes.
Yes. Now also maybe we should discuss about Czech literature's impact in the world. Yes, good or bad, useful or not useful. Can you hear me, Dr. Safir?
Yes. Are you done with your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to learn what is impact in the world this Czech literature really affect many people, or not just in for short time and there was impact and later on we gone.
Yes, as I said that because of numerous and also economic conditions are changing. Therefore, you see, young people, they are losing their attention span for more serious reading. But if you go to the bookshelves of any good publisher in almost any country, you would see that people and since they come in quick succession, they are, I mean, such writings are comparatively easy to conceive in terms of their plot and storylines, and the situations are also more immediate to the experiences of young people. Therefore, definitely it is making an impact. Whether that impact is positive or negative, good or bad, I don't want to get into all of these, terms of evaluation. They have only relative importance. I mean, things are always different. People are always different from each other, and therefore their thought processes are also different. So to pass judgment upon people and say that this is good and this is bad, I don't believe in this kind of value judgment. Impact is there, and that impact is of course different. Hardy or Jane Austen or Eliot or Shakespeare are from our own cultural backyards. Many writers that we can mention, when we read them, we derive different kind of inspiration. While on the other hand, our younger generation that is learning quite useful social skills, I believe, and interpersonal skills through the reading of and the social ideological conditions in our society. In a country like Pakistan, I was amazed when our perhaps first Sikh lit fiction came to the market, that is Karachi, You Are Killing Me by Saba Imtiaz Haider. She herself is from Karachi. When I read that book, I was really shocked that such a book can be, written and also published. And then if some people may say that it is in contrast or it is in conflict to our social values or of our moral values, they can say that, of course. You cannot stop them. But at the same time, young people are drawn towards these writers, and we can, of course, condemn them in any way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, also, this literature, I would like to say a little bit about Turkish literature. Also, John's diary was shown on television as movie, and people watched a lot. And also later on, The Sex and City also when it was shown adapted at sitcom also in Turkey, many watched that. And later with translation also started in Turkish literature. For example, Ekin Atalar, and he adapted Sofia Skinsel's works. And now, for example, there is one novel, Kocan Kadar Konuş, and in English, Husband Factor. And before was novel, after and was adapted to as a movie also. And nowadays also, just you said in Pakistan also started. Also, I want to say in Turkish also, after 2000, we can see Czech literature. Dr. Sakir, and thank you. And now, last question. I think you got tired. You answered many, many questions.
No, you are welcome.
And last question, and always one argument in literature about women writer and man writer. And sometimes people say, and there is difference between women writer and man writer. And this Czech literature, we can say women literature. And also, as women writer, man writer can be successful in this literature, or we should say no, and this literature should.
Yes, I can hear you.
You think women writer also can be successful in this literature?
Yes, a very interesting question.
Because some people say there is many different, but some researcher also says women should be explained by women more effective.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that historically, if you look back on the cultural production, especially literature, you would come to realize that basically, or perhaps in the beginning, naturally, many men writers have written about women's issues. In fact, some people say that even feminism is a male invention. Dramatic master. He wrote his famous play, The Doll's House, and that play created such ripples in the European societies. And it is said that it created a lot of controversy as well. Naturally, those were Victorian times and Victorian society, just like the way our society is now operating in a Europe. I read somewhere almost 30 years back, I read that many households wrote outside their houses at their front doors. They posted this, that it is forbidden to discuss the doll's house in this house. I mean, Ibsen you know, we should not forget, even at this point in time, that he was this kind of phenomenon. What they do have, I mean, whether it is male writers or female writers, you know, what they do have in common. You would be amazed to know that there are many men in, you know, contemporary societies are also being written, but there are many writers from the past as well as in the present who are writing in this vein in which chick literature is being produced. So much so that the title which is, you know, which is used for this kind of literature, which is written by men about, you know, such young women, that has a more derogatory, which literature you thought was more derogatory, then perhaps this one is even more offensive. But believe me, that there are many such writers, men writers, who are producing this kind of literature, and it is dubbed, you know, and in this fashion which I just mentioned. So what they do have in common is their inclusion of sex, love, and family from a male perspective, or a male author, because female authors are obviously in this regard. I was amazed to know that some critics have they regard Charles Bukowski's novel Women as the first of its kind in this genre fiction. And similarly, Ernest Hemingway's A Movable Feast is also regarded like that. But this again, I believe, is the same kind of tendency like American and European locations. We know that there are many writers like Nick Hornby, whose novel High Fidelity, or The Rum Diary by Hunter Thompson, Miss Lonely Hearts by Nathaniel West. They are all, you know, works which are written by men and which can fall within this category of chick literature.
Writer Adalet Ağaoğlu. And Adalet Ağaoğlu says, and before I didn't believe there is any difference between man writer or woman writer. And just one thing is important, and human, as human. But later on, and she says, actually I was wrong before, I should accept, and women can explain by women writers more better. And also this is other opinion.
Yes, if this program has resulted into some corrections in ideas and ideologies, then it definitely serves the purpose.
I want to give example, but of course in Czech literature, also in Turkish literature now, man writer is written. For example, Vefa Enver is so famous nowadays, and also he wrote one book. Also, title book is very interesting. Title of book is "I couldn't not do either child or career." And this is so famous slogan for women before, I can do career and also child, but he wrote opposite.
Okay.
Ask us, because now question time. And thank you so much to our speakers, Dr. Safiye AWAN, and also our participants, and they have so much patience. And now, Dr. Sibel, and he is Dean Faculty of English Studies in Namolu University. He asked, Chick is by women for a masculinist viewpoint. Dr. Safiye, can you hear me?
No, actually, I missed the question. Can you say it?
Okay, and no problem. Again, I want to repeat. This question by Dr. Sibel. Dr. Sibel asked, Chick is by women, for women, and about women. What is there for men to do when there is no scope for a masculinist viewpoint?
Well, I believe there is a little bit of man in every woman, and there's a little bit of woman in every man.
Yes,
you see?
like yin yang
Yeah.
philosophy.
So if this is the case, then I'm sure that there's a lot which is there for men to enjoy in Czech literature as well. And perhaps they can also learn a few good lessons, how to, live with these young lot, which so men can learn a lot and then live happily ever after with at least one of them.
I think they will hide. Now, other question by Rana Faisal Islam, and ask, since Czech literature plays under the umbrella of postfeminism literature, and why do we have the same old traditional characteristic like love, marriage, etc.? By Rana Faisal Islam. Thank you, Rana Faisal Islam.
Yeah, because Rana Saab, the thing is that in traditional feminism, the first, second wave, especially feminism, themes of love and marriage, they were derided and they were rejected. So, and usually we also, see in that kind of classical literature in tragedies. While on the other hand, in post-feminist sensibility, which is reflected very aptly, I believe, in Czech literature, we see that relationships happen and they develop an understanding, and then those relationships, they lead to some very protective kind of lasting in man-women relationship in all of these books.
Okay, thank you. Now, next question by and what are basic areas of clash and whose narrative will be not a pro-right at the end? By Samar Darnish, thank you. Yes, also you can see it. Thank you.
Basic areas of narrative will be most appropriate at the end. Yeah. I don't know what do you mean by radical feminism and Muslim feminism. Whether you are regarding Muslim feminism as radical or you are regarding Western, Euro-American in particular, feminism as radical, and you are contrasting it with Muslim feminism. But of course, is very much different from their European or American counterparts. Muslim societies are, they are informed, and their cultures are determined by, Islamic thought and Islamic ideologies. But at the same time, please remember that Muslim feminism itself is a monolithic term. I mean, their basic tenets from Islam, but there are others who don't believe in that, and still they struggle for women's rights, but they just challenge the traditional patriarchy by within the Eastern culture, without going back to the foundational text of Islam. Right? This is the basic difference, I believe. In one of my papers, I said this, that there are certain similarities, there are certain alignments between Islamic and Muslim feminisms and post-feminism, because in both of them, at least there is an emphasis on family values, on going back to the institution of family and strengthening that very important social institution, and respect for women, for example, so on. Both from the Western feminisms, post-feminism in particular, and also their own ideologies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And other question by Yasmin Rahojo, and she asks, could it be resembled to the soap operas when named in media?
Soap operas?
See also in screen.
Media. Oh, yes, I mean, perhaps you are referring to the various media adaptations of many of these, chick lit fiction.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, I mean, even these films in which you see such characters with those characteristics of, chick lit operas, whether it is in film, whether it is in sitcoms, and so on. Mm-hmm. So, yes, you're right.
Yes. And other question by Professor Dr. Doğan Günay, and also Professor, we are thankful to Dr. Günay because he gave us also this opportunity. And speech, and this literature just for short time, or no, can be also in long time can continue.
Everything has its age.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
I believe that actually this question has been raised earlier as well by Dr. Sibel. Mm-hmm. Some, I mean, people, like for example, Doris Lessing, the feminist,
this is very unnecessary.
it's just fashionable sometime, and just like any fashion, it will soon, go away. But as far as I can see, at least for the last 20 years or so, it's still around, and still it's making waves, and still it is appealing to the young people in particular. To us, till then, this thing is going to stay. But of course, I believe that monotony is something which human beings cannot live with. So after some time, some writers will come forward, and they may write something which will be dubbed as something else with a different kind of nomenclature, and then we would be discussing that as well. Or perhaps people after us that those issues are also serious, and therefore in this regard they have definitely affiliation with the literary fiction which is more known among the literary circles.
And thank you. Other question by Mr. Hafiz. And Mr. Dr. Savage?
I couldn't hear your question, please.
Yes, and this question is by Mr. Hafiz. Mr. Hafiz asks, what is the difference between post-feminism and liberalism?
And
liberalism.
I mean, it's like asking what is the difference between liberalism and Marxism, something like that. But literature and these decisions recently. Liberalism is a very old movement, and this is not something which you can associate only with one ideology, I believe, because liberal thought is something which you can find in any or which challenges the traditional role playing, which challenges the traditional viewpoints about man-women relationship, for example. So, of course, I believe that all shades of feminism, they are very liberal, and they are against the conservative patriarchal thinking. But there are affiliations between liberalism and feminism and post-feminism.
Yes. Next question by Dr. Sibel. He has another question, and he asked, Czech literature sits comfortable in post-feminism in the sense that the female self is centralized in the contemporary not possible for Czechs in Czech. By Dr. Sibel. Thank you.
If I could read these questions, that would be much better, because your voice is breaking and I couldn't understand.
Yes, and later on we will show in screen Dr. Sibatullah Khan question.
Yeah.
I would like to...
question by Dr. Jamil.
Yes, also now we can replay Dr. Jamil. and Dr. Cemil Asgar Cemil. Thank you, Dr. Cemil.
Unfortunately, I cannot see his here, and I couldn't hear you. But I think maybe he...
I can repeat. Dr. Cemil's question is, what is the fate of some stark feminist claims in an age marked by the relativity of all truths? Can you hear me now? Yes, now you can see in screen.
The fate, but generally we live in an age which is marked by the relativity of truth. You see, there is no, I mean, in fact, more than relativity. Now we live in the age of post-truth, as some people say. Therefore, to say the feminist, I believe that these conflicting ideologies, conflicting opinions about, feminism and about other such activist movements, they will continue to, clash with each other, and we will keep on living with them. I mean, all of these ideologies, they have their or delete the others. There are as many ideologies and as many interpretations of the facts and the reality and truth, even as many truths, as many people, as many psyches we have, as many likings and dislikings we have. So I believe I am a cultural relativist, basically, and I or whether we accept, in any case, they keep on living side by side.
Yes. Now, Asfah Abdul asks questions. If post-feminism dictates that absolute gender equality is not must, then doesn't it mean that this form of feminism is acceptance of manpower or patriarchy, in other words?
As well, that claiming rights on the basis of equality was something that feminism, renounced long ago. And that hardcore feminist movement of the second wave, which was regarded as man-hating feminism, that claim like human beings, movements also grow, and they become maturer with time, and therefore on the basis of difference, claims rights for claim. And I believe that because of this essential emphasis on the difference of the sexes, the biological difference and psychological difference, women are in a better position to to
Dr. Sevir, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And actually, there are so many commitments. Thank you so much, dear participants. And also, there are questions, but our time has limited. And now, last question. And this question also half question for me, half question for you, because our participants ask, what is different? Maybe you should answer about Pakistan literature. Later, I should answer Turkish literature.
I again couldn't hear your voice.
Says, and our participant says, what is the difference between in Turkish literature feminism or in Pakistan literature? What is the difference?
Roots of Pakistani feminist writings and the Turkish feminist writings.
Yes.
I can say, number one, that both of these are Muslim countries. States are not both of them Islamic republics, but at least they are Muslim societies. Predominantly, the Muslim and Islamic ideologies or Islamic culture, at least, that is prevalent and that is in practice. Understand that Turkey being a European society, it has progressed much, and it always was lucky, or mostly it was lucky, to have good leaders who were able to, work for women's rights, and also they gave them many legal and many social rights as well. In Pakistan, on the other hand, unfortunately, the situation is improving, of course, much slower. During the last 10 years or so, we see that our parliament has passed a number of laws in favor of, women's rights. So Pakistani writers who write about women's issues, whether they are men or women, they still have to struggle with this hardbound and entrenched kind of a patriarchy. That perhaps this situation is not so grave in Turkey, so far as women and their rights and their writings are concerned.
About this topic, and actually in Turkey, especially after Republic, and this women topic was very special topic because there were many reform about women rights, and later also women and also literature was affected by feminism movement in the world. But of course, before I talk, as I said, was not like West. Turkish literature, and we can see, for example, especially end of 70s, and we can see very well about women, and at that time because there was women literature and by women writer, so many women writers start to write about women. Of course, it was very useful for women, for women literature, and for example, modern women writer, and they explain to many issues about women. And also second wave affected so much, especially after 1880s. And in Turkish novel, you can see, for example, many topics about marital problems and about love, about sexual and everything. And women writers start to write very after 2000 also, and you can see many ways women characters in Turkish literature. And this is also thanks to women writers, maybe we should say, because there are so many quality women writers. Now, we complete this season. Actually, there are also some questions, but our time over. And thank you so much. And we discussed tonight about feminism and why post-feminism nowadays so famous, and also what is reasons and result. And later we discussed Czech literature and characters, women characters. Of course, this cannot be done just in one season. Maybe later on also we should continue from other platforms. And thank you so much, our dear participants, because they tonight Günay, Professor Dr. İlhan Genç, Professor Mehibe Coşar, our dear participants, and also thank you so much, Professor Dr. Safir AWAN. And I hope again we will meet another weeks and also organized by İMBAT Academy. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.